Whatever you're doing that's pushing forward, take every meeting, treat everyone with respect, treat everyone with dignity, take it and be pure and enjoy the process.
Welcome to Failure with Ryan Kavanaugh. This is a very exciting episode. I think as everybody knows, Failure is the podcast or the place where, as they say, success has many fathers and failure has none. Failure's found a father, and it's here. We're very, very, very lucky to have Chris joining us today. I think his resume speaks for itself, and I think all of you know who he is, but he is, I don't even think I'd say arguably, he is the preeminent both player and coach trainer in the world. Yeah. You played in the NBA, been in basketball his whole life, but most important, he's trained, you name it, from Jimmy Butler to, I mean, I'll let you know,
D-Wade, LeBron.
Yeah, LeBron, obviously LeBron, who my 8-year-old is obsessed with, by the way.
Oh, wow.
The only player he's just, it's LeBron. So on this podcast, as everybody knows, this is the place where we kind of try to recognize real life. Right. And, you know, this world we always talk about it is filled with, you know, perfect Instagram and X and you know, Snap, and, you know, everything's so pretty and flashy cars and life's so perfect, and, you know, and that's generally what podcasts have too. Like, tell us all about how you won the championship, right? Mm. And even your players, I'm sure, spend half their time talking about how great things are, and I'm sure you do too, because that's what people want to hear about. But we realized there wasn't a home to talk about the reality of the situation, which is, I don't care if you're a billionaire, philanthropist, a NBA player, a, you know, piano player, a ballerina. Like, if you're the best, you've failed a lot more than you succeeded. And
absolutely.
I've certainly failed a ton in my life, which is why I started this podcast, because really it's the failures that got me to the next step of winning. And I always kind of make this little analogy that winning is just what happens between failures, right? That's it. It's that brief moment. And there's no one that truly is successful unless someone's just handing it to them for free, in which case it's not success, right?
Never happens.
That isn't spending their life in failure, but realizing success are those little moments in between. So when we're talking about who are the best people to have on, I obviously, you know, through Melissa, I've known you for years, and we've worked with a lot of the same people.
Absolutely.
And even when I was calling, you know, Iman and different guys saying like, who should I have on? And they're like, there's only one guy. He's the guy that teaches us that, like, our job is to fail.
Absolutely.
But that is to learn from that failure. And so thank you for being on. And I feel blessed to have you. And before I even get into my world of sports and how I got in, the first question I always ask everybody is, what do you remember as your first failure in life?
I think one of my very, very, very first failures was me and my best friend. We were competing for a position in Little League. It's like the YMCA League, and his uncle was the coach. And I was a better shooter than him. But I really wanted to play point guard. I wanted to play that position. And I didn't play point guard because I was a better shooter. So it was a failure because I didn't get the position I wanted, not because I couldn't play the position, but because he needed to put me where he saw fit to make room for his nephew. And at that time, you know, being young, I think I was around 5 or 6. I could still.
Oh, wow, you were really young.
I could remember it. Yeah. I was like kindergarten, first grade, because he was my first coach.
Yeah.
And it was Coach Rice. And my best friend his name is Carl. And we're still friends to this day. And he can recall the story too. And, you know, to me, that was failure, because as a young kid, I'm trying to figure out, like, I know that's my position. I know I should be playing there, but I didn't get that position right away. But what it did for me is it sparked something inside of me to spend more time crafting, more time watching Magic Johnson and Isaiah Thomas and Tim Hardaway and all of these players. And it made me take not only one step, but a giant step to become a better player for the next season, so that there was no doubt I got the position. And I'll never forget that.
You know what's really amazing about that story, first of all, is that you remember being, you know, 5 or 6.
5, yeah.
Most people I ask, they're like, yeah, when I was like 28, you know.
Nah.
But more important than that is when we start the podcast off almost always it has this one thing in common. And it's why I like to ask that question first, which is I ask, what do you remember as your first failure? And usually someone brings up, like I said, something when they were like 28 and they're like, oh no, my life was perfect until then, right? But by the end, they're like talking about something when they were a kid. Wow. You went right to the heart of it, which obviously shows why you're so good at what you do. Yeah. You remember your failure at a time that I don't even remember. I think my first memory is way past when I was 6. Right? I think my first memory involved a girl, but you know. But you also do what nobody else has done yet on the show, which is I usually then ask, like, I help them to recognize that failure led them to what they are. So we had Bryce Hall on last week, and you know, he started out by saying his first failure is when he got knocked out in boxing a couple years ago. And by the end of the show, he was talking about how when he was a kid, he was bullied his whole life. He ate lunch in the bathroom, you know, hid from all the kids, and you know, it's made him what he realized. It's what I'm like. So you became, as an image, what you learned in failing as a kid, right? You went right to, here's what I learned, here's what happened, and here's what it taught me, which is, you know,
that's my life story. Probably
why when I called everyone kind of in and around NBA, and I was like, who should I have? Because I want the NBA to be represented. They all said you. Because you're already there, like you're the epitome of what we're doing. Right. So maybe tell me a little bit about that, because you're jumping so far ahead. Right. It's like I feel like if I was a therapist and then you came in, I'm like, you know, okay, actually, you know, let me hire you. You got to be my therapist now. So tell me, like, clearly you recognize failure as what leads to success. So you know, we'll come back. I want to come back to obviously your career and how you built what you built. But since we're on it, like, do you have a life philosophy from that? And do you carry it through in your work as to, like, you know, you said what you learned and like that must have been a big part of what brought you to where you are today.
Yeah, because I mean, when you're young, you really don't understand it. But like now I reflect and, you know, over the years you reflect back to those moments. So this is not the first time that I've thought about that moment and how that moment made me feel and what was my response to it. And so throughout my life, I really started watching to see when I was going through failure, obstacles, challenges, things that didn't go my way, it was how I chose the response. And choosing your response is a big part of how you move forward through failure. And that's something that, you know, when I'm working with not only professional athletes, but my company is designed for the younger ones all the way through, is not only to teach them and show them failure over and over repeatedly, but to now help them choose their response. And choosing your response gives you so much power in failing.
Such a good way to put it, right? Because in basketball, it's like, you know, nobody gets 100% of their shots.
Never.
Now, what's the highest percentage of a player? I mean, you know this better than I would. That they generally make in a season, percentage of their shots.
So, and we can tie this to money, right? Typically, 33 to 34%, a guy can make over 20 million. Right, doing that, right, and that's making 1 out of 3 shots.
Right. So you're failing about 65% of the time, 66% of the time,
not more.
If you're the best.
If you're the top best, and traditionally the NBA has about 3 to 4 guys that shoot in the high 90, 95, 97, 96. You know, and you know, so failing in sports, period, and failing in front of live audience, in front of the people that are behind the camera, it actually helps athletes, and this is why parents should put their kids in sports at an early age. It actually helps you build what I call mental resilience.
Yep.
It allows you to be tough enough, and this is where they use the word mental toughness, but it's really mental resilience that allows you to get over a play to get on to the next play. And that's what I was telling you earlier. We were talking about next play speed. How fast can you get to the next play?
That's for our audiences, because this is amazing to me, is like next play speed. When you told me that, I was like,
Yeah.
So maybe you can explain that a little, because that to me was like, I'm going to use that.
Yeah, it
Not
applies.
even in
You don't have to be in
sports.
sports, right?
Like, I'm going to use that in life.
In
right?
life.
And we were just talking about this before the show, but I'd love for you to tell, our listeners and our
Right.
viewers, like, what next play speed is, because
So,
it's such a great life tool to use.
So when we have a conversation with an athlete, coaching and teaching doesn't always involve a skill set or being on a court. So a lot of the things I do is privately. When they failing, I'm the guy that's right here that's saying, hey, next play speed. How fast can you get to the next play? So what happens is we tend to hold what I call mental bricks, and we stack them, right? But if I came in right now and I set brick by brick in your hand and I load up to like 30, 40 bricks, eventually you're gonna have to let it go. But mental bricks—
Or you're going to break.
Or you're gonna break. Mental bricks are there, but no one can see it. You can look like everything's going great, I'm holding it together, and then you see all of a sudden this guy breaks and you don't know why, nobody knows why.
Right, but it was always just building up.
And so they're called mental bricks. And so what we do is next play speed allows for them to let go. That's the hardest thing.
Because how fast can you move on from the play you messed up on, forget about it, and move to the one that you're going to do well?
That's what failure is about. This is what your podcast is about.
I mean, that's like next play speed. We're going to use that from the now on the podcast. I'm going to like tell everyone, like, got to remember this, because it is. It's so great because you can quantify it.
Right.
In basketball. You quantify it in a lot of sports, but in basketball, you're literally like down to, boom, it's 66%. You're going to miss 66%, and that makes you the best, which means you're missing most of the time, and you can't let that get to you, right?
You can't, because you look at people's body language, right? So body language speaks volumes. And so if you're a true competitor, if I'm really watching and you miss a shot and you drop your head and your body language shows that you haven't accepted failure, if as a competitor I can lean into that. I can go
your
in.
Opponent's gonna I
can go in for the kill. I can watch in a timeout and I can watch you walk off the court, defeated.
You see it in the face, you see it in the body language.
You can see it and you can smell it, and you begin to take advantage of that. And these are elements that people don't even understand when it comes to skill sets.
It's like in life, it's such a good, the thing about pro sports, especially basketball, because it's very fast-paced and individualized. People don't realize how individualized basketball is. Even though it's a team sport, it really is. It's the most individual team sport, right?
In the world.
Yeah. And like one person is the pressure's on them.
The pressure,
and you don't have that in any other sport, but other than maybe tennis. But the interesting thing for me, I talk about this a lot on the podcast, but I went through a very public failure, right? Like I had, as you probably know, I had the largest studio in the business when I was in my late 20s. I had the second largest sports agency in the business, largest basketball agency, and it went through a hostile takeover. And I wake up and my company, I have to put it in a Chapter 11, but I'm on the front page of every paper for 2 years. Before that, I was on the front page of every paper, like Wonder Child, Forbes Dream Child, and it's funny because people ask me how it was like. I'm like, I think I feel kind of like what a pro ball player would feel like.
Absolutely.
Because for about 8 years, I was told, run the ball this way. And the rest of my life didn't exist. It was like, as long as we were crushing in movies and in TV and our sports agency was growing, and I was playing 278 days a year, and I was like, everything was done for me. I was like, you just show up to that meeting and do what you do, right? And everything said how great I was. I, front page of, Forbes and Variety, Vanity Fair, and blah. And then, this shit happens, and it's not my fault. Although, of course, it is my fault, because everything, at the end of the day, it comes back to you. But in the time, I'm like, this is my fault. But I'm waking up every morning doing like, okay, what is the news saying today about me? Oh, fuck. And it's just so public. And it's like that gut-wrenching feeling.
Right.
And when I think about it and I explain it, I'm like, I don't know how pro players do it, because I had to do it for maybe a little bit less than a year. Right? Because I went and everybody said I'd never get the company back out of bankruptcy. And I went and I fought it. And I did. But for a year, it was like, I always joke around on the podcast that Mel Gibson, it's not a joke, actually called me and said, you didn't do anything that bad. Like, you had a hostile takeover and you're getting worse press than I did. It's like repeated over and over. What the fuck? And I'm like, I don't know, man. But yeah, we could say fuck on this one, by the way. Yeah.
Okay.
So I always think like, okay, what about these guys who spend their careers in front of that camera and in front of that magazine? And not only that, there's like 30 guys who spend their life, and I mean 30 guys, 30 big guys who have millions of readers and followers that are like analyzing every little thing they're doing and criticizing it, right? Even though they can't do it themselves, right? Just like I was like, they can write about that, oh, my company didn't do this, but they didn't make 250 movies prior, right? Pro athletes have to spend every game getting, even if they're winning, someone's writing like, oh, they were off their game. He was a little slow. His 3-pointer wasn't great. He messed up on that pass. Like, and that's what you train them to deal with.
Yes. You are a master pivoter. So one of my gift is a natural gift. My natural gift to connect with individuals, right? Is something that I can't turn off. Like I read the whole room. I could read you. I'm watching you. Your gift in pivoting makes me want to go into business with you because failure is not even an option, right? So failure in this podcast is great for you because you're a master pivoter.
Actually, I've never been called that, but I would say I am a master pivoter.
So what in the terms of sports?
I mean, I'll acknowledge it. Like, I'm not gonna.
No, you're a master. I mean, I'm just listening because being able to pivot means that no matter what situation or direction you're in, you're gonna find a way out, right? So you're a master pivoter. That means you've mastered the ability to pivot in any obstacle. And that is something that you should pat yourself on the back for because you can deal with anything. So life is just a journey for you now.
Yeah.
And it should be fun because there's nothing that's presented to you that you can't do.
I think if you read the room or you're psychic, but like that's how I wake up every morning. In fact, on our last podcast, I was explaining it wasn't until I hit 40. It was right around 40 years old, and so it was not that long ago, and having kids, that I realized I woke up one morning and I was like, I'm actually happy. It wasn't when I was like, traveling the world, making 30 movies a year, and had the, Forbes and this and my life looked like it was, picture perfect, and, the bachelor party that Leo and Bradley threw. No, I was super miserable, actually. And I realized when I was happy is when I woke up and I was like, I have everything I want in my life, and that's because I know I can do what I want in my life, no matter what I do, right? And success is not defined about, can I make an extra million on this or 10 million, or, is it the movie going to do 100 million gross, or am I going to build a tech company that's worth 500 or $1 billion? It's succeeding because I'm happy in my life, and therefore whatever I want to go accomplish, I'm going to accomplish. And being happy in my life means I'm happy with myself. And I feel like that's probably something that players got to struggle with because they come into this at a very young age.
Yes.
They got a lot of pressure. They're being told your value is based on how good you are on the court, and that's it.
That's it.
You got a very short time span, and this is something that I also would love to touch on and hear from you about. Your court life is X, and they know that. And it's like you got this small window in life. And by the way, you got to make your whole life in this small window.
Right.
And don't fuck it up.
Don't mess it up.
And you define yourself that way. And I learned because I defined myself by my business, movies, TV, whatever. And I had to get out of that to become better at that.
So my company is called Just Win. It's a mental wellness. Just Win. And the win is what is important now. So when you talk about when you woke up, if this is just like an athlete, okay? And most athletes that have extreme success, if they hang on to that character, you've been in the business, right? They go to events for the character. This is after they play. Everything is still built around that character. Well, I have friends that are Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
That character is no longer that character. What they've done is they pivoted, right? And now they apply the Just Win method. What is important now? So who they are today is not what they did then. Even with them being considered arguably one of the best players ever, they've disconnected from what the results were. And so when I'm working with players and the best players in the world, one of the things that we have to go in and recreate for most of them is the habit of being result driven. And so being result driven makes you look for what the end of the result is, which affects your performance during the game. It can affect your performance in business as a CEO. When you're looking at the end result, it takes away from the step-by-step process. So if we're starting a quarter and I'm starting a game focusing on the end result, I never can be present and I never can get maximum and peak performance.
So that's like just net. What's the saying?
Just win.
Just win. But what's that? You also have the play, which is
Next play speed.
Next play speed. It's the same thing.
It's boom, boom, boom. So keywords and cues can get people.
Because next play speed, like just when, you're basically saying like, don't think about the end and don't think about the prior.
Think about right now. Try to be present. So right now I'm fully present with you. You know, being in yoga, being mindful, working on breathing, everything that I've done before I got here,
yeah.
I'm fully present. So that means I'm listening. I'm listening with my eyes. I'm watching you. I'm watching your movement. That's very hard for people to do. Some people cannot be present.
No.
And not being present means that you're driven on the results. And being driven with results as an athlete affects your peak performance.
Yeah, because you got to be top. And the smallest little, whether it's your brain, whether it's your I don't know, the smallest little thing, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, the best athletes, 33%.
Yep. So when you talked about how you was like, man, it got to be tough for the athletes to have to be under scrutiny for years. Well, the guys that get an opportunity to work with me, and pretty sure there's other guys out there, we're not focused on that. We're focused on the moment.
So how do you get them there? These are sometimes 18-year-old kids who are being told,
those are the best.
In the world.
Those are the best to start with.
Yeah?
It's hard to teach an old dog new tricks.
Yep.
So the earlier I can get you, the easier. Not to say that I can't teach an old person or an older athlete how to become present, because the older you get, the more you're more interested in like, dang, I should have listened to this guy
earlier.
10 years ago. But my younger guys, like in the league right now, they're having extreme success.
Yeah.
I mean, I got a good group of players that are just destroying.
Who are you, just for our audience, just, like who do you think you're top right now?
Well, in my younger group, I'm talking about guys that are between the age of like, I'll say 18, 23.
Yeah.
Like Tyrese Maxey.
Oh, yeah.
Darius Garland. These are guys that...
They're the best of the best.
Man, that having those guys and being able to be a part of their team, their family, their team of basketball, because I'm just a small part of the team.
Well, you're a big part of the team from the fact that everybody I call is like, can't do without him.
Right. And so when you look at those top guys, the earlier you get them, the easier it is to create new habits and build good habits. Because we have good habits, bad habits, right?
Yeah, it's like school, right? The earlier you can teach the habits.
Yeah. So we have a bunch of those guys, and not to leave anybody out that's watching, I have a bunch of guys. Jaren Jackson Jr. from Memphis, Obi Toppin, you just Miles Bridges. You go through, and we can just go through the list of those younger guys, and then we have the guys that are 24 to like 28, 29. Then you have the 29 to like where 35. Then you have the king.
Yeah.
You have LeBron.
Yeah.
And he's in a league of his own.
My parents, they just moved, but they live in Brentwood on Bundy, and they have this beautiful hill in the front. And they've been in Florida now, but the top of the hill is LeBron. So where you know how he looks down on that hill with that waterfall?
I've been to that.
That's my parents' house.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's where I grew up.
Oh.
So my 8-year-old, whenever we go over there, be like, can we climb up the hill and see if we can see LeBron?
Right
yeah. But he started that when he was like 5, and I was like, because I don't watch that much sports anymore, just don't have the time, or at least especially when he's around. But he at 5, he'd be like, "There's LeBron." Like, how do you these kids pick up on everything? So it's funny because like Jimmy, we crossed paths through Iman and Jimmy and all these guys who we were their agent, and I mean a lot of guys called it, like probably a dozen or so, and.
There was a bunch of guys.
They were pretty young. I mean, they were in their young 20s.
Jimmy, take Jimmy for instance.
Yeah.
Jimmy is probably one of the best students I had. Jimmy was very coachable in the fact that he allowed me to have an impact on his life on and off the court. That's from building regiments, from being up at 5 o'clock in the morning, early, from meditation to, how to study the game. And, he is a true example of work ethic, commitment, and not being afraid of failure, because all the odds was against him. Nothing was ever set up for him. And then you have some guys that everything is set up for them and they're so afraid of failing that they fail.
Right, because it's like the pressure's too much.
It's too much because they're not present.
I don't think that the whole world actually knows Jimmy's story, and it's a great one.
Yeah, it's a great story. Jimmy didn't have a high school scholarship. He went to junior college. From junior college, Jimmy was a backup player to a player that Buzz Williams was going to recruit. And a shout out to Buzz, that's my guy, one of my coaches, and at TJC. And Buzz didn't get to see that guy, but he seen Jimmy. And when he seen Jimmy, he said, hey, if I ever become a head coach, I'm gonna come back and get you. And he went back and got Jimmy, and he did such a remarkable job with Jimmy. Jimmy, toughness, mental toughness, and his mental skill set, and the way Buzz coach and banter was able to really groom him and grow him. And then when I got to work with him as a pro, he was prepared and he was always willing to lay it on the line. He had the right concept, the right mindset. And this has been, I think this is Jimmy like 10, 12 year in the league.
Yeah, yeah.
And
we signed him in like 2012, and I think I sold the company 2016.
Yeah.
So we had a good 4 years with him.
But his story is just amazing. But it was all about overcoming adversity. It was overcoming not being on an AAU team. Jimmy didn't play AAU.
Oh, I didn't know that.
No, not one AAU team. And overcoming everything to be an Olympian. Like I prepared him. He made the Olympics and never played no Olympic basketball, none of that. And
so he made it, and he never played.
Never. He made the Olympics as an NBA player, but most of the time, the guys that are Olympians or Olympian team, when they were younger, they played on the Olympic team.
Yeah.
He didn't.
He's one of the few that he didn't go like do the normal through college and then kind of do the Olympic, kind of pre-Olympic, junior Olympic, then go in to get recruited. He went to junior college. Got recruited directly by a guy that saw him randomly and said, if I'm ever a head coach, I'm going to come back. Yeah. He's the ultimate success story, but also failure story, but he didn't have anything to lose.
That goes back to what I told you earlier when we was talking. If you take away all the options, like we live in a world, right, that we have so many options, right? When I look at them, like, wow, like they hand me a menu and they're like, well, they come right back within 30 seconds and say, what do you want to eat? I'm like,
I got like 500 things.
I got 500 things. And then what you do is you look at the menu and then you look up, hey, what you going to eat?
Yeah.
Too many options will make you fail. But being with no options will make you face your fear.
So true. It's so true. And that's my life. I've lived that way. Every failure I've ever had, goes down to having, I don't call it limited options, but where I've had to, it is limited options. In my life, I think everything's an option that's open, but it's about not having it in front of me and having to figure out, like, what are my options, right?
If I put your back against the wall, I just know that you're a master pivoter. You might want to build in the best company in 2024 ever. So if I took away everything from you right now and put you in a position, I know for sure you're going to come out of there with something.
Thank you. I feel like I would. And
I know you would. You've done it.
It's funny because I had a partner when I originally started, before Relativity was the studio, it was called Relativity Management. And I started it as a management company actually for writers and producers. And it came out of me starting Marvel, which was a crazier story that led to that. But I had a partner who, we had a dispute, as partners do. And when they did this article on me, they went and they found him, they interviewed him. They're like, you guys had this like lawsuit. He's like, yeah, we're good. And he gave this quote. I was like, the best quote I felt like I ever read about myself, and it came in from someone that knew me really well. And I was only 28 at the time, 27 when he said this. He said, take everything from Ryan tomorrow and drop him off in the middle of Egypt without the language. I promise you, by the time, go back 4 years later, he'll either be back here with the company or he'll have built the biggest company there. And I was so blessed that he
I could see that right away.
He said that, and this was a guy I'd had a dispute with.
Right.
But he called me the Energizer Bunny.
Well, because he's a competitor. So when he was competing against you, he could see your strengths and weaknesses.
In your mind, whether it's you personally or one of your players, like, what do you think is the biggest failure? We talked about your first failure. Right. What's the biggest failure that you've either had to deal with in a player or in your life or in yourself?
I'm such a master pivoter, and I expect to fail. I expect like my expectations going in is I'm already ready to pivot. So like if I was going to one door and they said no, I would have already went around back, or I'd have went around front. Like I'd have did another option. Like, you know, I'm really solution. I think forward.
You're already like
I'm already. I program myself.
Checkers. I mean chess. They're playing checkers
every time.
Yeah.
So it's nothing. You could put me anywhere in the world, and you drop me off, and you come back. And so I don't know if I've had my biggest failure, because even with no from an investor, no from a partner, or no to work with someone, now you put me in a situation to choose my response,
right,
and go back. So
there is no no.
There's no no. There's no closed doors. It don't exist. There's no box. I think people create these boxes, right? And they put us in it. Hey, you two get in the box. And while we're in the box, they get bored and they say, hey, think outside the box. Yeah. It's like, well, wait a minute.
You just put me in that box.
Just put me in a box. So about 20 years ago, I realized that there's no box.
You know, I'm sure you know this, and I don't want to lose where we are, because I want to hone in on a story, because maybe it's not yours. Maybe it's a player story. Right. Maybe you can't use the name. Maybe you can. But I don't know if you know this, but you know, it was a great analogy. And when I was doing the studio and everybody said, this is going to be impossible, right? And I was looking around, I'd seen what was happening in Hollywood, and the same thing was happening in the sports world, which is what led me into the agency world. I don't know why, and at a young age, because I started it when I was like 23, 24, I was like, these people are all like grasshoppers. And what I'd read about grasshoppers is that if you take a jar and you put a grasshopper in a jar and you put the top on, it'll try and jump out and it'll hit the top one time. You take the top off, it'll never try and jump out again. Because then you told it the top is there, it knows the top's there, it's never going to try and come out. I'm like, that's Hollywood. That's also what I saw in the agency business and you know, a lot of the businesses we did, which is people are told, this is your top.
So what would
and they never try to jump out.
What would be like some steps or like action plans that you could teach other people to overcome that when they're failing? Because they're going through it. Like the people that are watching, there's so many people here in LA that are in Hollywood. They move here to go where you went.
It's funny.
How would you teach them?
That's kind of what I'm trying to do even with the podcast, is that, because what I'm trying to teach them is nobody, and I think that's part of why, like, why you're so successful at what you do. Why every player I call is like, this is your guy. This is the guy. Because what people need to realize is they look at an actor, they look at a Leo, or they look at a Bradley, or they look at a Scorsese, or, you know, a director or producer, or, you know, Todd Phillips, David O. Russell, and they're just like, oh, look, they're just successful. They went to film school, they were really good, they must be artistic, they made the movie, or they're a great actor, and they hit it out of the park, right? But no, I watched them all struggle and fail and not give up. And you got to take failure as not a weakness, not as failure is not failure. And this is funny, because Nigel and I, on our show, where he was debating about it, he's like, I hate the word failure. And I'm like, he's like, but I love being on failure. And like, it's like, failure isn't failing. You haven't failed.
Right.
You know, you've learned what not to do.
Right.
Right. And you can either walk away and be like, I'm done. Then you never really tried.
Right.
Because if you expected that you're just going to walk up and that door is going to open for you, and it didn't, and that's it, that's all you're going to do, and you're going to feel sorry for yourself, then you weren't meant to do what you're doing.
Absolutely.
And so what I tell everyone, particularly in a field like Hollywood, which is similar, sports is a little different, because there are people in Hollywood who make it that aren't talented and actually make it big. Right. You know, because there is some luck to it. And there are people in Hollywood who are extremely talented that never get their shot, because there's such a small 300 actual movies of size made a year. There's only, you know, if you think about it, you've got 52 weekends of the year. We don't think about it that way as much anymore, but it used to be, think about how many weekends a year you have. So you got 52 weekends. You've got about 5 of those that are just terrible release weekends that nobody would put a good movie on. So you basically have 40 weeks a year, which means if every studio, and you never have every movie, you have 3 tracks in a theater, so you can put 3 big movies out at a time, right? So that means that there's really 150 movies that people consider to be big movies made a year, right? Wow. And now you got Netflix, and they're doing bigger movies, but to me they all suck. They're all programmed the same movie they make over and over. If it's worthwhile, they're putting it in the theaters, right? So if you got 150, that means there's only, of those 150, how many of the same producer are making them, how many same director, how many same writer. Now you're cutting it down to like 50, 60, 70, right? That are actually like really big, working and made it, in quotes, right? So the thing about Hollywood is you've got a very small number, but the thing that makes almost every one of them, when you look at it, without exception, succeed is that they don't give up and they fail. And they fall and they think it's over and they're told it's over, because Hollywood is a place that people love to talk shit.
Right.
People love a falling star, right? What's the saying? The only thing people like more than a rising star is a falling one.
Absolutely.
Right? So they love to see people drop, and they love to be like, yeah, I told you were never going to make it, right? I mean, if I had a dime for every time someone was like, you're doing a studio? Like, it's never going to work. You're doing a sports agents? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? But that always empowered me, right? The more I heard no, the more I was like, oh, really? Now I'm going to do it bigger. Just because you said no, I'm going to do it bigger. And but what I always tell people is look at those 60, because you can look at them. So like David O. Russell is a perfect example. I bring him up because it's just the last guy name I used. I hired him to do The Fighter. I had this movie that came across my desk, Fighter, that Wahlberg had been champion at Paramount for 7.5 years. So now go to Wahlberg, only movie he wanted to make. It was greenlit by Paramount and ungreenlit 4 times. He had Brad Pitt in it, playing his brother. He had Darren Aronofsky, who was a huge director, directing it. Greenlit, ungreenlit, greenlit, ungreenlit. Came across my desk. Paramount wasn't going to make it. Mark brought it to me and I read it. It's actually 2 people who didn't give up in this. I remember I read it, and it was a very dark story, because I don't know if you saw it, the movie The Fighter.
I've seen a little bit of it.
It's a boxing movie. It's a true story about a guy, Mickey Eklund, and his brother Dickie, and big kind of real boxing story, right? But the original story was much more about the brother that Christian Bale played and his kind of coming up, but had this big bout with drugs. That's what it was really about.
Yeah, I've seen it.
So I read it, and I'm like, we're not making this movie, right? If we want to make today's Rocky, I'll make it right now. I'll greenlight on the spot. And by the way, the budget that Mark brought me was $47 million. I'm like, I'll make it for 22, but I need it rewritten to be Rocky. I don't want it to be the older brother's drug story. I want it to be the young brother's Rocky story, right?
Okay.
The guy who was given a shot that was, always a stepping stone, but then shocked the world, right?
I like that.
And I want it to be Rocky. That's it. And Mark, after 7.5 years of no, was like, let's go. I interviewed directors, and David O. Russell came to my office, and he had this insane pitch on it. And he's like, I can get it written in less than 3 weeks.
Wow.
I got a call from Ari Emanuel, who, I'll tell you a funny story during this podcast, which I'd love to tell about how Ari called me like 4 months ago. I've been talking 3 years. Told me to go fuck myself on my birthday, which was really funny. I mean, on his birthday, sorry. Over the UFC, it was you'll laugh at this. But David came in and pitched, and he said to me, I fucked up a lot, but I promise you I'm going to be the biggest director in Hollywood again. And I was like, and I listened to his pitch, I forgot all that. Ari called me and said, if you hire David, Mark's out. I'm like, okay, Mark can be out. I'm hiring David. He's got it. I'm telling you. And just because he got pissed 8 years ago on set, I don't care. I wasn't there.
Right.
Right? We greenlit the movie. It became, I think, the #1 movie of the year. It won, it was nominated for 8 Academy Awards. It won 2 and did $100 million in the box. And Mark made, tens of millions, which means Ari made it, and so did David. And then David went on after that and became the #1 director in the business, Silver Lining Playbooks, blah, blah, blah. And then Mark Wahlberg's career took off. But neither one of them were willing to give up, no matter what.
Yeah.
And David could have walked away. 8 years, he didn't make a movie, but he was still in my office pitching, right? Mark Wahlberg, 7.5 years. This was he could have gone off and taken another movie and made a little money. He didn't give up. And the second thing I always say is, it's never as bad as it seems, and it's never as good as it seems, right? Never. You always think when you're like on top and you're great, you walk in and everybody's like, oh, look, that guy's, they're talking about how great you are, right? Yeah, some people are there. You walk in and you're a pro player, they're like, he's a great player. Look, it's cool. But the whole restaurant is not talking about you.
No.
And then when something really bad comes out about you, you're walking in and you're like, fuck, they're all just talking about how terrible I am. They read that article this morning. They think I'm a piece of shit. Yeah, maybe one or two people are gossiping, but nobody really cares.
Right.
And that's also the thing is if you take all that out and you realize the race is with yourself.
It's you versus you.
Right.
Yeah. I just dropped a shoe with a company I'm partnered with. It's called Kane Shoe, Kane.
That's a good
and
name.
I'm gonna send you some. I just got to get everyone's shoes. I'll send them over.
I'm a shoe fanatic. So.
They're unbelievable. They're therapeutic shoes. We made them for athletes and for people that like are on their feet, walking around. They're so nice. But the shoe that we dropped is you versus you. And so what I did
Love that. That's the name of it. You versus you.
That's the name of it.
It's such a good name.
Just win. You versus you.
I love your. You have such good like little. You catch everything in a phrase.
Boom. Because people learn quicker when you can connect something to something. So if I can connect this, I can really get your brain to activate, and I just have to use that word. And so with the shoes, when you put the shoes on, in the insole of the shoe, it says you versus you. Because I believe when you put your shoes on and you look down.
You're looking down, you're remembering, and you're putting yourself in your...
Then I have to look in the mirror.
Oh, you're right. It's the next thing you do. You put your shoes on, you look in the mirror.
You versus you. And then I have the slogan, unlock your mental power. Just win. Good. And so we created a mental health shoe that can allow people to become mentally fit. And mentally fit is the same way we would build our body. When it comes to fitness, you could see someone's muscles like, oh, look at his body. He's really growing, but you can't see the brain. No. So the brain needs the same fitness as the body. It needs the same daily routine. It needs the same regiment, habits, and this has to be consistent day to day. And this builds the resilience that you have to go through when you're going through failure. When you talked about 60, my brain went 60 people like in this industry, and you looking at all these people here, right? You know how many people get drafted every year?
Tell me.
60.
Wow.
So when you said 60, so this is really, I do NBA pre-draft.
Yeah.
Every year with Clutch, with Rich Paul. Shout out to Rich. Rich is one of the best in the world. My partnership with Rich is through the roof. We do pre-draft to get guys prepared to get drafted.
Yep.
Right. The one thing that I share when I'm working with these new kids that are coming in, 17, 18, coming right out of high school, G League, all these different scenarios now. I said, your families, you are excited. Everybody's excited about the draft. If there's 60 going in, there's 60 going out.
Yep.
But nobody celebrates the ones that are failing, that are being removed from the NBA. Do you know what those guys have to go through on the other side? Because I see the graduation.
10 times worse than the guys who got drafted. You don't even think about that.
So the transition period.
Because you want them to go back. You don't want them to give up, right?
Right. And sometimes the door closed. And just like you said with your director, he never gave in to the thought process of not being a director.
Nope.
It wasn't about money. It wasn't about fame. It was his passion and his calling.
Yep.
And that's how you could see that someone was very dedicated, because he was persistent. He was consistent. He did it over and over again until eventually the door's going to open back up. You can't keep him out for life.
No, not someone who's talented.
So most people that in sports, when they're removed, because 60 go in, 60 go out.
What percentage of the 60 that go out come back?
That is probably less than 1%, because you have to go through this mental.
It's like a break almost when you.
It's a failure. You hit, boom, you're at the bottom. So if you didn't pick up like all your money, or like if you were playing for the fame and you were playing for, other things outside of playing for basketball, it's really going to hit you because your lifestyle changes.
Yeah, because you defined yourself.
You defined yourself to be in the NBA when there's not just the NBA. Overseas in Europe, I have players making $4, $5, $6 million a year. Yeah. The league is unbelievable in Europe.
All over Europe, China, Japan.
I'm just telling you, I'm going to Japan in 2 days. And most of the time, people limit themselves.
There's only the NBA.
They box themselves in. And it's a bigger market. The international market is absolutely bigger and can pay them more if they embrace the culture, change, and adjust.
Well, I mean, so I was there when China first brought the NBA over. Actually, I did this video with a bunch of, Jimmy did it, and Dwight, and Iman, and we brought them all to China for the first time. And we did have a funny video I'll show you.
I used to come to the office.
Yeah, remember we'd shoot all that stuff on Maple.
On Maple.
Right above the Mercedes building there. So I'd always, create these. And this one was called And the NBA Goes China. And this was before there was any China. And we had, I'm facing, you don't know who he was. He was the number one, he was we just signed him. He was the number one Chinese NBA player.
Not Yi, Jillian?
No, the number, Yi was like the most famous.
Yeah.
He was actually the number one scoring player, even though Yi had his like movie and all that. Yeah. We had him super tall. He was like, I'm talking high sevens, maybe even almost 8.
I got to think about who it is.
I'll remember his name.
I work with Yi, so I got Yi.
Yi's great.
I have the best, not only the best players in our country, but I work with the best players in other countries.
So we did this fun thing where we were teaching them Chinese.
Hey, what up, boy? 说中国话，全世界不知道北京、上海，那么希望听说你是第一次离开美国，
是真的。
由于 Rocky Rubio 的加入，你们3个会不会有点像人在囧途？
我想成龙，
我跟上大人。
And then we were asking them, in Chinese, what superhero they were when they went to China. But we got to learn a lot about like they had a fun time, and we got to learn a lot about the international markets. But so you were saying, so back to this 60 players.
This is part of the failure part.
Yeah.
Because you said 60, and I'm like, okay.
So 60 go in, 60 go out.
But nobody talks about the 60 out. And the 60 out starts to play the blame game. So then they come to the agent and said, it's your fault. You didn't put me there, you didn't do this, but really it's you versus you. And a lot of times you don't take the information, the young people don't take the information and apply it because it's been so easy for them.
Right, because it was handed to them the whole time.
Yeah, people was just saying, oh, I got you, and making exceptions, but the whole time they're like, we're gonna get him out. We're gonna get him out of here. We got another guy to replace him. And before he knows it, he's slapped in the face and he's out. Now he has to look at G League, international play, which he's not even prepared for. So when he's going into it, he has a bad attitude, bad body language, and he's not present.
Because he's going into it, he's gone into it and he's lost something that already is like, as you said, 60 people in the world are going to get a yes. So like the fact that you don't get it, you shouldn't be like, your life shouldn't be over. You still have an opportunity to go do something that 1.01% of the population is ever going to get. Go make millions of dollars playing the sport you love.
Absolutely.
Right? But they're going in with a bad attitude because this is it. They thought, if I don't get this, life's over. And that's the one thing I think you and I have a lot in common is no. So to me, you use the word pivoting, and it's funny because I always, when I look at a business, which, I get a lot of business plans a day. One of the things I always tell people when I look at them is, so what's going to happen when it doesn't work this way? Like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, the one thing I could tell you is you might be more successful, you might be less successful, but it's not going to work the way you wrote it in your business plan. So what's going to happen when it doesn't? Because it won't. You can't write in a business plan the way life's going to happen. You can prepare and you can say, this is my model and this is what I think is going to happen. This is what I hope is going to happen. But one thing I promise you is somewhere along that flow chart, it's going that way, even though you wrote it's going that way. And the businesses that make it, I mean, think about it. Amazon started as a book reseller.
Absolutely.
Right?
It's the pivot. It's the pivot.
They were selling books. For 20 years, they were losing money selling books. Amazon, right?
Right.
When you think about, I don't know if you remember Tesla, when it first came out, everybody from Jim Cramer to Forbes wrote it was the stupidest idea in the world and there was nowhere for electric cars in this world. So this is a fact. The average company lasts in the S&P 500 7 years.
I didn't know that.
So you think about these companies, they get up, they become the biggest, they're in the considered to be in the elite 500 companies. They have all the resources in the world. You're in the S&P 500. You got a Moody's rating. You can borrow money at the cheapest price. You have access to pretty much all equity capital. The average company stays there for 7 years. And it's not because they've got a bad business plan. They don't pivot.
So then that goes back to what greatness really looks like, because if we're using the NBA, because of my world, you look at the Steph Currys over a decade plus, Chris Paul. You look at guys that like LeBron has done 21 years, and
that's insane.
But he's a pivoter. His work ethic, his commitment. Like, how can you scrutinize someone that has done 21 years in the industry that the lifespan is less than 10 years?
8, 7, right? On average, it's same as the S&P.
Average. But remember, I think it's shrunk to 4 years because 60 in, 60 out.
Oh, that's right. I forgot.
So only the first round guys and the guys that agents are good enough to get them guaranteed money to lock them in, they get the complete 4 years. The other guys don't get the complete 4 years because there's an undrafted guy that's better than the guy that was drafted in the first round.
Yep. So they're just like, all right,
we're gonna give them a two-way. So now they have the two-ways and the 10 and the
rules change.
The 1090 to where guys can come in and they can sign them to the team and cut them and put them in the G League, and then you have the guys that can sign a two-way that could play in the NBA and G League half the season. So if you can handle failure, if you can design yourself to become mentally flexible.
Yep. That is a very good word, mentally flexible. I bet you use it all the time. And
I do.
I don't. I'm stealing all these words from you for my next.
That's
you're
what
gonna
it's
be
meant for.
watching the podcast after. You'll be like, wait, he's just stole every single
I'm just gonna
catchphrase
coach
from
you
me.
up. I'm becoming his
You're my
mental
coach now. Yeah,
that's
I need
exactly what we're gonna do. Because I coach.
I meditate every
CEOs.
morning too, so we can do it together. What do you do, TM or what do you do?
I do breath work. I do the yoga. So this morning I did hot yoga. I did 75 minutes of 26 and 2. So 26 postures and 2 in a room about 110 degrees or more
sweat it all out.
with the humidity. And what it does is, me and my good friend Dwayne, D-Wade, Hall of Famer.
D-Wade's awesome.
He's in the yoga now, right? But the first time that I took him to yoga, I was explaining to him that, like, it's going to challenge you because it's you versus you.
Yeah.
And at one point I looked over at him and I seen him he was eyeing the door.
He wanted to leave.
He wanted to leave, but I was looking and I was like, I know. But this is how his inner channel, because he's failed so much to become successful, right? You know, we went and had coffee after. And he was sharing the moment, and he knows this. He was like, it took everything in me to not negotiate with myself. Because he was like, I gotta go to the restroom. Maybe I gotta get some water. Think about all the excuses that you can come up with to get out.
Yep.
But he didn't. And that's
what makes him him.
That is a fierce desire inside of you. And we all have it in us until we put in the situation, we don't know that we have it. So that's why failing is very important. And that's why the show is so important.
So it brings me to that saying, necessity is the mother of all invention.
Yeah.
And I was just reading articles about some of the biggest breakthroughs we've had, whether it's in like science or medicine or tech. It comes from, they call it necessity. I call it like you say, what are your options? It's almost like a desperation of some sort, but a desperation of not like, oh my God, I don't know what to do, but a desperation of like, I got to figure this out. I got no other choice but to figure it out.
I got no other choice.
And that leads to it's impossible, but that leads to like, we got to change it.
That's why you hear a lot of guys' stories and women's stories in Hollywood of like being homeless, right? Being homeless is like a figure piece. People lock in on that.
Yep.
But to be honest with you, they didn't have no more options.
Yep.
And they really crafted. They really was driven. That everything was gone. They had no more options. Go home.
Yeah.
Go back to where you came from.
And only then.
And only then, the story. So you watch all these people that are successful and they're like, yeah, I was homeless. And people like, man, they were homeless. But what transpired in being homeless? He had no options.
What got him there? What was he thinking?
And that's how the director that you gave the second chance
Same
to,
thing.
you not only gave him an open door, you gave him a platform, and he just said, "I'm out of here." Boom.
So, something that we were just talking about, we kind of going down this path. You obviously are known, not just known, you are the guy in basketball, and not just the NBA, but I think as we're getting into, in all basketball, because there's a lot more than
It's
just
a
NBA,
lot
right?
more than-
And I think it's opening up more and more and more. There's more jobs for basketball players internationally than there is domestic.
Absolutely.
And there's plenty of money, and it ain't like, I hate to say it, but it ain't like the playing in the minor leagues baseball. No, you're actually, you go make real money.
You
and
can make real money.
And it's a great gig.
Yeah, some of my international players play in Barcelona,
So, I mean, you get to live in Barcelona. Oh no, I have to live in Barcelona.
Greece. I got players that are playing in places that, when you're in Turkey, in certain parts of Turkey, and, in Australia. And, the Australian league is played during their summertime. So right now it's summer in Australia. It's winter here.
It's summer there.
Summer there. People don't know this. Oh man, you gotta go to Australia. And the guy like, yeah, I gotta go. Don't come over. And
You're like, it's like the best weather ever.
It's the best weather ever. And, in Japan and China, I have the MVP of the Chinese basketball league, Eric Moreland, for the last 2 years. He's MVP and they've won the championship. And
China basketball is as big as U.S. now. It just took off, right?
It did very well. Europe to me is still one notch under the NBA.
Yep.
They teach the game very well. They play very well. When I was on the flight coming back from Dubai, I actually watched an international game, and man, it was so good to watch. And I seen in the game, it was 8 players that have all been drafted in the NBA. Been drafted.
So they're literally basically catching up quickly.
Yes. And the crowd play, the jumping up and down and the interactions. And, so now with streaming and everything, you get a more of an inside look of international.
So you think it's Europe? Do you think it goes U.S., Europe? Is China after that, or is it?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's Europe, China, Australia, Japan. And then you have other places like Puerto Rico is taking off with the 3-month league.
Yep.
And so with the 3-month league is right between, so you can actually play in the other leagues and
right,
still
you don't
come
have to be just in
be
the
in the one league.
So we did, we bought Fight TV like, I don't know, 2 years ago, and we did a deal with Cube, and we were doing the Big Three.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we did that for a year, which was a lot of fun. I mean, listen, that's hard to put together.
It is hard to put together.
Did you work with them at all?
Well, I was talking with his son a little bit, and a lot of the players, so you have players that didn't know they was retired. Okay, let me explain that.
Yeah.
Like, that means they didn't get picked up, and they're like, I'm just going to wait, and then a year go by, you don't get picked up again. There's no celebration at the end.
Nope.
And so these are the guys.
There's no retirement
There's
party.
no retirement party. Only 2 or 3 guys I know for sure, and we talk about it. Kobe had one.
Yep.
Dwayne had one, and Shaq didn't get one.
He did?
No. It's only going to be a few other guys else.
Wow. What about Kareem?
I think Tim Duncan had the farewell.
Yeah.
And I think they gave Dirk a little bit of one. But most of the guys I deal with and work with for years, they're retired without even knowing they're retired. That transitional period.
So that's, before we go to, I know I'm interrupting my own question, but that's really interesting about failure, because so you got guys, and like I said, I feel like for a minute in time, I kind of felt what they felt, for their whole careers. But they're on top of their game. They're everywhere they go, they're the best, they're defined by basketball. They're defined by not just basketball, but they're almost like an actor, right? They're defined by the character they made themselves in basketball on the court.
On the court.
And even, they might not be that person off the court, but they kind of, as you said, unless they pivot, they kind of get stuck in that character.
Yeah, you got to detach.
But then they wake up and they don't know they're retired. And
They don't even know.
They have to hit this realization that like their entire life, which has been basketball up until that point in time, right? Like, you can't be one of the 60 without having dedicated your life to that, right? And defined yourself
And
by
defined it.
at least for a period of time.
A long period of time.
And now you wake up and you're not that guy anymore. And what happens? Like you see that's failure, right?
That's failure. And it's failure that can lead to depression, substance abuse. It can send you into a spiral, right? It can really mess you up unless you've worked on your pivot. Here's some things that we can educate and give athletes that are young, that are watching this. We can give them some advice that they can take, right?
So I was gonna ask you, like,
Stop turning down meetings. Stop turning down meetings. Stop turning down the opportunity to shake hands while you could put your jersey on. There's so many business opportunities that are presented to people that are making really good money, and they wake up and say, I don't want to do it. I'm looking at the bank account. I got enough money. Why would I do this? Why would I meet this person? Why would I go to dinner with this person? Because when the ball stops bouncing, you can't get that meeting anymore. If the football stopped throwing, the baseball, you look at every sport, when you cannot put that jersey on no more, those doors and those opportunities that you had, they're closed. You can no longer get that phone call that you can get when you put that jersey on, because people want to meet the character.
Yep.
So my advice to young athletes in all sports, young actors, actresses, whatever you're doing that's pushing forward, take every meeting, treat everyone with respect, treat everyone with dignity, take it and be pure and enjoy the process. Because at the end, you're going to be faced with people not taking your phone calls. And you will not be able to pivot because you didn't answer their phone calls when they were calling you.
that is not just in basketball.
That's in everything.
I could tell you that the calls and meetings I could get when I was running the studio, they changed a lot when I wasn't running the studio. You know, guys that were my dear friends, of course, loved me so much, right?
That's,
And,
you know, and if you didn't know how to handle that, I talk to guys all the time, like, they calling me, hey, Chris, listen, I know you know such and such.
Yeah.
I'm like, bro, you make 250 million.
Yeah.
But then at the end of the day, you realize that money's not everything. Resources not everything. Having access.
Access is more, it's very important. And it's funny because I make a joke now. So when I had that 2-year period or year-and-a-half period where I was like, I was the pariah because the press said so. And then I got the studio back, right? And people started calling again. And I'd make this, even to this day, once I did Triller and I did the Tyson fight, things like people I hadn't talked to in forever that called themselves my friends, I'd get a phone call. They'd be like, hey, how you been? I'd be like, I've been great. I was trying to reach you. I was like, oh, you must have had my old number. Yeah, I was like, I haven't changed it since I was 18. And they just go quiet.
Boom. I say that all the time. People see me. I could be in the airport and it's like, Chris, I was trying to reach you. I was like, and I hit, if you with me, I was like, they're finna lie. Because my number is the same number since I was in college.
Me too.
I have the same number.
And by the way, you can't forget my number. Like,
my number, you can't forget it.
It's only got 2 digits.
And so people, when they say, man, I've been trying to get a hold of you on social media. I'm
you're like,
whoa.
Yeah.
No, I got the same phone number. So that means that I'm accessible and I want to work with everyone.
See, I learned the lesson the hard way, but I also learned the lesson the hard way because I didn't practice what you were saying. I mean, I was young, not an excuse, but I'm 26 years old being told, you're the king of the world, you control Hollywood. And so I didn't take all the meetings and I didn't take all the phone calls. And there's a lot of people that I didn't return the call. And so I don't blame those people today. I don't blame if they're like, fuck him.
Right.
He didn't give you the time of day when he was there, fuck him. They have every right to say that.
Absolutely.
But the people who I was working with day in, day out that I gave their first director job to or act or whatever, they like disappeared and then showed back up and then they pretend like they're trying to reach me. I'm just like, nah, man, I'm not playing that game. But
that's good advice for the younger people.
You got to just surround yourself with the people. Like, loyalty is really important, right?
It is.
And the older I get, the more I realize the less friends I actually have.
Absolutely.
It's not that less people are around, but I realize what is a friend, right? Like, and who do I want to be around? I don't need someone around that's just telling me what I want to hear, because maybe they think they're going to get something or they meet someone they want to meet. No, like a friend is a person who's actually going to tell you what you don't want to hear.
Absolutely.
But you like them around because they love you, you love them, and they don't need anything from you, and you don't need anything from them. And
that's when the door's really open.
Yeah.
When I don't need nothing from anyone. So when I go into the room, I go into the room expecting nothing. So when I go into meetings, when I go into places, my expectation for other people, I don't have any.
Right.
I'm
That's
really
the best.
open-minded to it. My expectations for myself are very high. The way I carry myself, my presentation, the way, you know, I want to be in a position where people can speak about me when I leave the room. And that is so important about how you carry your name and those things. And that's how I got to where I am. I know we was talking about the MVP.
Yes, so that's exactly where I wanted to go. Is MVP, your motto, your training, and I think this is so pertinent. I know you use it for players, but it seems like it would be more pertinent to the players who just are figuring out they're retired, they didn't know they were retired, than the players who are in the game. And it would be more important to the people watching this who are trying to figure out their next step in life.
Absolutely.
Or maybe they just failed at something, whether it's they didn't get the job they wanted or the school they wanted to get into, or it could be basketball, it could be sport.
It could be anything.
Whatever they perceive they failed. And you have a program
Yes.
that you're launching, or
Yes.
launched, sorry.
Launched.
That, like, I didn't even realize I lived by, but when you explained it, I'm like, oh, I live by that.
Yeah.
Tell us about MVP.
So MVP is meditation, visualization, and positive self-talk. You know, it takes at least 5 minutes a day. It could be longer depending on how much time you have, but it takes about 2 minutes a day to meditate. Meditation can be open eye meditation or it can be closed eye meditation. So you can literally be driving in your car and you can be meditating, working on your breath work and breathing.
Before we go to the V, maybe you can give the audience, for those people who might not have learned meditation, I'm lucky that I had a teacher. Actually, we'll talk about it. My teacher was one of the Maharishi's disciples, which is awesome. I know you're really into
one
that.
of those teachers.
I have him, Tom Knoll. You'll love him. But instead, I said, like, a lot of people either don't have the patience to listen to something for 8 hours, or a teacher, or go to the David Lynch Fund, or whatever it is, right? What's your advice to those people? How do they learn to just meditate for 2 minutes when they're driving? What's the best method, or do you have a method?
I do. And I use sports always as an analogy because I feel like everyone around the world at some point has been a part of a sport, right? I call it mental timeouts, okay? A mental timeout, and let's use a basketball game because I'm a basketball expert.
And most people
easy.
understand basketball too. So.
It's easy. In basketball, you have different types of timeouts. You have a quick timeout, 30 seconds, right? You have a full timeout, a minute or so. You have a TV timeout, media timeout, right? That's about a minute and 30, right? At the end of each quarter, you have a timeout. At the halftime, there's a timeout. Now with the NBA, they're able to challenge plays. So that's another timeout.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So if I really want to manipulate the game, I can call a timeout, go in and next play and challenge it and get another timeout.
And make your timeout longer.
To give this guy a rest.
Yeah.
If you notice, those timeouts all had different types of time frames.
Yeah.
Right? So in meditation, your meditation doesn't have to be long. When I didn't understand meditation, I thought meditation was something else. And I was like, what? Meditation is really just being mindful of where you are and who you are and just really clearing your mind. It's so simple to meditate, but taking a mental timeout, and I'll go into more of that and after I finish the MVP, is it can happen in your car.
Yep.
So I could pull up at home and I've had a 16-hour work day and I want to be ready for the kids. I'm going to practice MVP. I'm going to meditate in the car about 2 minutes.
So
Deep breaths,
meditate,
visualize. So now, like before I got here, as I lost my phone call right when I got on the hill. I was in a phone call with a company that's trying to create a partnership. I wanted to be prepared. So I started practicing my MVP. I was visualizing sitting here, visualizing walking through the door, engaging with people. I only took 2 minutes and the guy pulled up behind me. He was looking in the car, but I couldn't even really pay attention, even though I could see him in my peripheral, because I was visualizing how I would be today, right now on the podcast.
That's pretty awesome.
And then the positive self-talk. We speak so negative about ourselves that we project that energy and we project that on people, and then we expect people to talk positive about us.
Yeah.
So positive affirmations are really great, not only for athletes, but but for anyone.
What's the secret you give to people watching? Like, what are the best positive affirmations? How do you do that?
Well, I think each individual, so I can give you a system and then you could build the system. So you can say, I am, I will be, I am going to do. You take those systems and then you fill in the blank.
You're basically giving yourself what you're gonna do.
Absolutely. Today, I will be the best that ever been on the Failure Podcast.
It's really good.
Right now. So with MVP, I practice this, and it's in my book. I just released a series, a 10-part series, ebook.
What's it called?
10 Minutes to Win.
This guy's got to check out 10 Minutes to Win.
It's pretty good.
I can't wait to read it myself.
I'm got it for you. And this was the whole thought process behind it. I got my master's degree in counseling. My first dissertation that I wrote, and most people don't know this because they only see me for sports. But when I was coaching in college, when I was done playing, I was a graduate assistant and I was working on my master's degree and I was working on it in counseling. So I was working on my dissertation, and my dissertation was about the emotional intelligence of minority student athletes.
Wow. That's a very specific, I bet you're the only dissertation ever to be written on that.
My professors always like, hey, you need to give up sports and you need to get your PhD and go into this because
it's pretty amazing.
You'll be pretty good at this. That's why when you fast forward, I am where I am. And because emotional intelligence is important, but I felt like being in basketball, like the majority are African-American men in it, right? And I realized that they come from different environments. People come from different neighborhoods that they're not equipped with emotional intelligence. So I could poke your button. I call you out of your name. I could do this.
Exactly how
I could do it. You become angry. You can become assertive. You can, interpersonal skills. You could be sad. You could be happy. It's these emotions that actually take you out of character. It all happens in a game. I can hit a 3, timeout, boom, that team's happy, that team's getting cursed out. We can come out, this team gets the alley-oop dunk and won. Now the emotion of sadness. So you experience every emotion. And I was so curious about how there was a lack in the minority community of emotional intelligence. And my professors were like one of the forefounders in writing all the books. And I realized every book was written and assessments were all written for people 1970, 1980s. So over the last 20 years, my job to this day, Just Win, is about 2024 assessments, 2024 quizzes, 2024 of giving people an actual mental skill set, making them become mentally fit to be able to face that day, to be able to deal with that day. And that's how I came up with 10 Minutes to Win. In our society of technology.
And is MVP in 10 Minutes to Win?
Oh my God, it's in the first book. What is important now? And so I need to give you that MVP because we all have an MVP in us.
And you're doing a university around this too in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, so we're trying to form our partnership right now that we'll be able to do an academy or institution around wellness. And with that wellness, being able to then take it globally. And that's what I want to do. I want to create, and I am going to create a platform that people can recognize, but then get the skill set. So in the 10 Minutes to Win, I've carved out all the fat. So a lot of books that you read, like self-help books and things.
They're super long and they go on, they're winded and...
Let's cut it all out.
Yeah.
Here's what you have to do to win your day.
And it's actually 10 minutes?
This is what you have to do now, because people can do that.
Yeah.
So don't read a
10 minutes is
preface.
nothing.
Don't. And then at the end, I have a podcast that is tied to it that you click, boom.
Also called 10 Minutes to Win?
And it's talking about that section, that volume. So I released,
smart.
volume 1 is what is important now. Volume 2 is mental timeout. Those are the 2 that's out.
And where can you see this?
You can go to justhoop.com.
Okay.
Yep, because we exclusively put it on justhoop.com.
Smart.
And as we begin to build out, we're going to open it to other platforms.
Maybe we'll put a link down below on ours for you if you'd like.
Absolutely.
So on this episode. We'll put it down here so
Yeah.
you can.
The
other
first
people can
two are
see it.
there. Yeah.
Nice. I want people to check this out. 'Cause
Yeah,
you're
it's-
like, I mean, the whole world can learn from you. And I think what's so fascinating to me, and I knew this coming in, but I didn't really know it till now. Like, I mean, you're helping the most elite of the most elite in terms of trained athletes, which means that their bodies and their brains have to be so honed, and yet they're facing failure all day, every day.
Every second.
And your job is to help get their head out of failure.
Next Play Speed has been the first volume. So you're going to see it. Be the king.
I mean, it's so
be
great.
the
Next Play
king
Speed,
of-
like-
Next Play Speed.
So I just feel like for the world, like in what we're trying to achieve in failure, I don't think we could have a better guest. And that's why I'm loving this. I could talk to you all day because it's this. And if you're doing it for those 60 people a year or some subset of those 60, the best of those 60, call it, you're taking the 60 and then even going to the level up, right? What we face, I'll call us regular people who don't have to play in the NBA. I mean,
Right.
as much as I work hard, like, I couldn't do that. That's like,
Most people fail privately,
but it's
not publicly.
failing publicly is so hard. And I just feel like, with what we're trying to accomplish here, which is show people like, failing's okay, guys. Like, we all fail.
It
And
is
we're
a-
going to fail. And if
Yes.
you didn't, the saying we always bring up is, if you haven't failed, you haven't tried.
In my mental timeout, I view it as a cell phone. It's the best analogy, right? So failing is some people can handle failure and it's like, okay, then they need an action plan for it. But what happens when you take your phone off the charger and you go about your day, middle of the day, you about 50%. And you'll recognize, okay, I don't need to charge yet. You may look for a car charging, keep going.
Yeah.
You'll look down and you'll realize it's yellow,
Yeah.
20%. Most people in life don't address anything until it gets to yellow. And if you don't address it and something interrupts you, now it's red.
That's red. Now you're in
red-
crisis mode.
So the ebook that I wrote is designed to help you identify before you get to yellow. You can identify on the scale from 100% to 0, and we want to be able to catch it, and then you can apply what type of timeout you need.
To get yourself back.
That's the
To
application.
recharge.
So we have the application, which we call Live It.
Livid.
Live it.
Oh, live it. Got it.
Live it. So you now go live it. So now you got to apply it. Then you come back and we have a reflecting piece. So a part of the 10 minutes is giving you what you need, now sending you out to go do it. That's a part of the practice. That's how you fail over and over again.
So good.
So that's my vision that I've taken, having the best players in the NBA, in the world. Now I'm coaching CEOs, I'm coaching leaders of countries, and my takeover is to be able to give the most simplest form of skill set from the mental side to help them deal with failure.
It's like, honestly, I think everybody in the world, no matter what you do, or, as my dad used to say, if you're going to go be a trashman, be the best trashman
Be the
you
best
can be.
in the world.
Right? Like, doesn't matter what you do, but like, we all face some form of failure, whether we admit it or not, right?
Right.
And then there's those people who just don't want to admit they fail because we live in this
Absolutely.
society of like, oh no, everything's perfect. And it's also so fast, right? Like you said, it's
Fast
like,
paced.
like go, like that, but the reality is, at least in my life and the people we have on the podcast, like people who really succeed. And again, it's not about money. You said it earlier, like they made $250 million, they can't get the phone call back, right? It's not about money, but it's about succeeding in what you think is important. Whatever it is, like I said, it could be beat a trashman or beat an NBA player, right? Or beat a film producer or a director. But it's recognizing that you're gonna fail.
And giving yourself permission to pause. You can always give yourself permission to pause. We could be in this interview right now. You can ask me a question and I can say, hey, let me take a moment.
Yeah.
People never give themselves permission to pause, to think and reflect, and then give a response.
Yep.
We always just respond. In the fast-paced world, give yourself permission to pause.
Did you ever, when you were studying for your master's, did you ever come across this? He was a psychologist, but he also was a sociologist named Cooley.
I've read a little bit of him.
He had this thing called the looking glass self. You remember that?
Just a little bit.
So
I have to go back.
I didn't get my master's, but I studied a little psychology in college, and I always found him fascinating because what he always said is that we see ourselves as what he called the looking glass self.
Right.
And what he said was, we look in this looking glass and we see what we think other people see. And we don't actually see what other people see. We see what we think other people see. So when we're picturing ourselves, we're picturing ourselves as we think other people see us.
You know, I do remember because the story was told by one of my professors. I can't even remember my professor's name, but he said this lady had a son and he was a giant. She set him in front of a mirror and she asked him, "What do you see?" And he said, "I see me, I see myself." But the whole world sees him as a giant.
Yep.
He didn't even see himself as a giant.
No. And so Cooley had this whole thing about that's how you define yourself. So if you want to make a change, you actually have to change the way you think other people see you. You don't have to change the way other people see you. You don't have to change the way you are to other people. You have to change the way that you think other people see you. And the beauty, what I took that to for myself is I just had to stop caring how other people saw me.
Right.
And start caring about how I saw
So
myself.
I can create a skill set for that. So that's one of my gifts. So like I take ideas like that and I have a system. So the system is meant for other people to take the system. So I can build a system around not just caring, but now what's the skill set that's involved to prepare you for that?
You're like the mental health chat GPT.
Yeah, I guess so.
So, I mean, that would be amazing to do because I honestly, like I said, I think I said it earlier, I wasn't until I was about 40 and had kids. I don't know what happened, but I just started realizing I actually don't give a shit what anybody else thinks. And as soon as I realized that, as soon as I went, I'm in this for me and I'm in this for my kids and the people I love, right?
Some people do that and they go to shit. Like, oh, I don't care, so they don't get up no more. I don't care, so that's why I was saying I could take that because you took it and it's actually a positive way of thinking, and you took it, but that in itself can be, we can create a system and create a skill set that's designed for people can practice every day to not give a shit.
If you could, it'd be so important because, you know, what it started to do for me, it's interesting, is like, so I always lived, you know, as soon as when I started being able to afford it, you know, I didn't come from family money, so I grew up well, but like I made all my own money.
Right.
You know, you always were taught, or at least I was always thinking, oh, you buy the biggest house, you buy the fastest cars, you know, and so I did. You know, I've been married a few times. You know, we always had houses everywhere, and you know, lots of cars, and you know, the best planes,
Right.
And when I started really, as I said, not giving a shit, what I realized was, you know, I think I probably work as hard as I ever did, except that I'm home for dinner every night with the kids, no matter what. I don't miss that. But I realized, like, do I like living in the biggest house? No. It doesn't make me happy.
It don't make you happy.
Do I actually enjoy driving whatever car? Not really. Like, I like to drive fast. I like nice things, right? But no, what do I want? I want enough room to have everything I like in the house, but I want a place where I can actually hear my kids everywhere. You know, I want to, you know, be comfortable, right? I actually was crazy. I was living in a modern house. I was like, well, that's what everybody like thinks is cool in LA. I was like, I hate modern. I like Nantucket. I didn't even know I liked Nantucket, you know, cozy, but I was like, this is what makes me feel good.
Right.
Right. And all of a sudden I'm like, I'm not doing it because of what other people think is important in success. I'm doing it because of what I think is what makes me feel happy.
Absolutely.
Right. And I don't care if I have $1 billion, 100 million, a million, or 100,000. You know, I live the same way.
Right.
You know, and that was the most liberating thing in life. To
That's
me,
super
ever.
liberating. Yeah.
Because then I'm like, okay, when I want to go do business, I'm not doing it for someone else. I'm not doing it because I need to prove it to someone. I'm not doing it because, you know, I feel bad about something I'm doing. I'm doing it because I'm like, I can make a difference. I can actually I want to succeed at this, and I think I can be good at it, and it's another challenge in life. And I think that's like, if there's a way you could turn that into, as you said, like a system.
Yes, a system.
I wish I had that system. If I had that system in place when I was 25,
I'm gonna have to develop it for
and
you.
I was running the studio, I would never have put myself in a position to have been vulnerable enough to have even allowed it to go into a hostile takeover.
So we got to get to the people that are that age now and see if we can help them navigate it without them have to get to that situation. And that's what building the systems. That's what coaching, teaching, being a master teacher is all about. It's about having a blueprint, and then the blueprint is always changing because you're staying present. So you got to be adjustable, right?
Pivot.
And then you got to be able to pivot, and it should be able to, it's not cookie cutter because now I can apply it to each person in this room.
So you have a challenge that I think that with that you're gonna have to add into the system. Is I think back when I was 25, 26 and, you know, king of the world, so to speak. I think like, would I have listened to someone who came in and said, I got a system you need to follow?
Right.
Right.
That's the
And
ultimate.
that's the hardest challenge.
That's
is
the
like,
ultimate challenge.
I don't know. I might have been like, no, look at what I'm doing. Like,
Yeah, but
I'm
then-
only gonna listen to myself because I was too cocky.
Right, because then I don't have anything to lose. So imagine the people that I deal with, right? I give them honest feedback. It's not what I say, it's how I say it.
Yeah.
Right? So, hey, that's wrong. What?
Yeah.
Show me how it's right. So I know how to go in and go directly to it. I'm not afraid. What we're gonna do? You're not gonna work with me anymore.
Right. It's like, okay, fine.
Like
I'll go to
fine.
that.
So that's what I think the freedom that allows me to connect with people that people can't connect with.
Yep.
Because I'm not afraid. What you're not gonna call me no more?
Right.
But eventually you'll think about what I said because I'm not gonna say it in a way that make us do this.
No.
I'm gonna say it in a way to make you think. So
That's why I think
communication-
your program, your MVP, your entire system you're setting up, which sounds like it's not a system, it's a lifestyle.
It's a lifestyle.
And you know, your brand, whether it's the wellness center or whether it's, you know, the 10-minute
10 minutes to win.
to win, or whether it's MVP, it sounds like you're culminating into like a lifestyle of how to live a healthier life in general.
Absolutely.
So when does it launch? What date?
It's already launched. We put
launched.
two books out.
2 books
already.
out. And when did the rest come out?
So we're gonna release them in January. They're already done. Everything's done. Every podcast.
You release
tour,
all of
every
them in
book.
January?
Yeah, I think they were trying to figure out if we were gonna release 2 a month.
Yeah, figure out the right rollout. No?
And I'm just like, let it be.
Just
let it
go.
be. Yeah, just why are we overthinking it? Because when you overthink it, it never goes as planned. So I'm always ready to pivot. So just like
It never goes as planned.
it never goes as planned.
What I love about what you're doing, and I think, you know, I definitely would love to have you back. And what I love to do in having you back, and you're not getting off this easy. We're not wrapping yet. But is have you on my side of the table where we bring people in and you can
Absolutely.
help talk to them about their failures, because one of the things that like happens often and is as I said on the show, is like people in the beginning are kind of like, oh, here's what my failure is, and they come up with a little, oh, I lost this, or, you know, I didn't win a game, you know, oh yeah, I remember the first time I got traded or whatever, right? But after about an hour of talking, what comes out is this, like, I mean, I said Nigel Lithgow literally said, first time I failed was when I tried to commit suicide. He said, literally, that was his first failure on this show. And we were like, oh,
Wow.
wait, what? And it was not because he actually failed. He had gotten success in the dance world and what he wanted, and there was too much pressure. And he tried to kill himself. And he was in his young 20s. That's what defined everything. Bryce Halls, we said, like, you know, he brought up how, oh, I didn't have any failure. I lost a boxing match. And then it was like, no, my whole childhood was the worst childhood ever. I was the most bullied. I ate my lunch on the toilet in the bathroom. And that's what led me to where I am, right?
Wow.
And it takes a while, though. And what I don't have, because I've failed. That's what I've done in my life. Is I've failed, and then I've succeeded, and then I've failed, and I've succeeded. And, you know, a lot of people look at what I've done and say, oh, you know, look, so much success. And other people from industries love to talk shit about me and be like, oh, he failed. But what I don't have is you've developed by working with you through your education and through being a pro ball player and through being a coach and then through being, you know, a thought leader, like you've developed techniques.
Yeah. That you only gain in the trenches.
Yeah.
So I'm a million hours in because I'm always applying technique. So imagine each student that comes to me is different.
Right, you're learning from them as much as they're learning from you.
I'm like a computer chip. I can pick up the way you walk,
Yeah.
the way you talk. I know if you're telling the truth.
Yeah, you're
I know if
ingesting
you're
all of
lying, and I'll write, boom. And then, you know, I've got stubborn learners. Like you asked about how, he said, I don't do it like that. I've always done it like that. And I was like, that's your problem.
You've always done it like that, yeah.
That's the problem. So the problem is that you're not even open to see if it fits. So I would teach me how you would teach it. Well, I've never been asked that question before. Well, you just told me that you've only done it this way.
Right.
So why are you here?
Right.
What's your why?
If you already know,
Then what are you doing?
you must be the best. Show me.
Yeah. So teach me, and then I learn from I take everything like a computer system and I store it. Photogenic memory. I take it off.
I mean, it's so good. And
then I apply it to the next person.
I mean, we should definitely, when we're bringing guests on, have you on
That's
this
easy for
side
me.
because they're talking about their failures, and like usually I'm having them talk about it, but I don't actually have hey, let's create a resolution for the world.
That's what you need.
And you're
to
creating
plan.
resolution. You're
That's what I'm
saying,
doing.
oh, I know how to fix that,
I know how to.
right? And it's funny because you talk about meditation, and so like I don't have an MVP or 10 minutes. I actually had to go through a rigorous training with multiple people over 15 years to learn how to meditate. And, you know, and now I use it, like, I pretty much meditate, I'd say 3/4 of my day, I'm in a meditation of some sort, even as we
Open eye
sit here.
meditation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I had to go through so many different techniques and classes, and, you know, the ultimate meditation to me is like when you sit down, and the second you sit down is figure out how to separate your body and mind. Mm-hmm. That's how you get in the moment. Pull yourself out of your body for that second. Your body's there, your mind's here, so that you're not living in that, whatever the pressure is of that moment, it's gone because you're not there.
Yeah.
You're
That's a technique.
Yeah.
That's another system you can create for people and just kind of go through. Like I would kind of let you talk me through it, and then I could take what you're seeing and how you see it and create a process, a plan, a system, and then we could teach it to other people.
I was the youngest and first kid ever to be diagnosed with anxiety disease when I was 13 years old. And you didn't have anxiety when I was 13.
Right.
It was like a no-no, right? Like I was like, my parents were like, you know, what's wrong with him? And even it was hard, but all the way into my 20s was the first time other people even were talking about anxiety. Even then it was hard. But what I had to do was learn a system. And that's where, like, I even started to learn to meditate then.
Did you learn how to let go?
So it's crazy that you say that. So I have a tattoo on my back that says "Let Go."
Oh my goodness, it's over. We're done.
But I'm Jewish. We're not supposed to get tattoos.
We're-
I have a tattoo that says "Let Go."
We're done.
I got it when I was not a tramp stamp. I got it when I was 40. Right at that time, when I said I was like becoming this person, I hired this tattoo artist named Dr. Wu, who's very well known for these fine lines he does. And I'm also very into physics. Mm-hmm. I study physics and metaphysics. And I'd come up with this for years. I studied what's called string theory and superstring theory, and I also study physics. And so I'd come up this picture I just kept drawing over and over. And it's the eye, which is the all-seeing eye, and then in a triangle, which has its own meanings, but also Pythagorean theorem with a string. And then I'm a pro archer in real life, and I'm also Sagittarius. And so the eyelid of the eye was an archery, but then in cursive below just says "Let Go."
Let go.
And I never thought I'd get a tattoo, and then I called this guy Dr. Wu up, thinking I'd never get hold of him. He's like the man who knows how to do lines. Came over to my house at midnight one night and put it right in the dead center of my back in big cursive, "Let Go."
The art of letting go, or we can call it the flush it mentality.
I like the flush it mentality.
Yeah, because when you sit down on the toilet, you take a shit.
Yeah.
You flush it.
Yep.
You don't hold on to it because it'll kill you.
Actually, forget the flushing part.
Yeah, but it'll kill you. So if you allow it to back up and you don't flush all this shit out of you,
yep, then you're gonna go toxic.
So we can call it the let go
Or the
or the
flush it.
flush it mentality.
It's funny because I realized that was the last not last, but for me to enter this new phase of my life
Yeah, let go.
where I could accept failure.
Yeah.
I had to let go.
You gotta let go.
And, you know, the only mistake I made is I realized after I put it on my back, I was like, wait a minute, I don't ever see it. But I know it's there.
You know it's there. Yeah, you gotta let go. You gotta play present.
Yep.
So for like some of the best shooters in the NBA, they've mastered letting go and they play present. And that's how we talk about next play speed. So play present, next play speed, and letting go. Like that happens like that fast in a game.
That's surreal. By the way, I only have one tattoo. It's not like I have 50 with different names. It says let go.
That's what I'm telling you. I knew it because you had mastered. I could feel the energy that you've mastered letting go. I could see it. And that popped in my brain.
In my mind, I feel like, and you hit on it, the ultimate path to success in any world, which is failure, is learning to let go of the failure. And I feel like your next play speed is letting go.
It's letting go. Let go.
When you say that, I'm like, is letting go. It's like, I just took my shot.
Yep.
I missed it, whatever, even if I made it.
Yeah. So when I thought about when you mentioned anxiety, I've thought about you being a young kid and not being able to let go. And,
so bad.
And so that's where the anxiety comes from. So imagine being a player in a game and you missed every shot in the first quarter and it carries over to the third quarter. You haven't let go. And so you're still thinking about the past versus the present time score in the game. So letting go is very important in life. And that's why when I sit down, I do these presentations, I'm gonna be speaking around the world. It's easy to relate sports into real life. No matter your position, title, amount of money you have, at some point you're gonna have to let go. And that's choosing your response.
You know, it's you see all the greats in sports, you see the greats in business, and it's funny because people in my lifetime that I was looked at and thought they'll be on top forever. You know, and names of people that I respect so highly that were the captain of industry. And then I watched something happen, and I watched, you know, their lives somewhat fall apart over a little something that happened. And they've spent 40 or 50 years building this incredible career in every way and breaking boundaries and changing the world. And a little something happens. And it's usually not the thing that happened that ruins that legacy. It's usually that they can't let it go.
You can't let it go.
So if it happens, it's like, it happened, I accepted it, I'm moving on, let's go to the next thing. But instead they live in it and they can't let go that it happened, you know? And I look at literally some of my mentors in the film business, in business itself.
Right.
You know, one of the greatest people who I've ever seen, both pivot and let go, I don't know if you know who Michael Milken is.
Michael Milken.
So Michael Milken was, he's one of the wealthiest people in the world. He would definitely be the wealthiest person in the world if he didn't run into his issue. But he was, they used to call him the junk bond king. But in the 80s, he owned something called Drexel Burnham. And I think they said he was making somewhere around 100 million a day. And he created the junk bond. And the whole world was doing it. I mean, the whole world, like every banker, every bubble. And it made too much money. And when interest rates went up, a lot of people lost money in this instrument, kind of like the Bear Stearns fall apart.
Right.
And he actually took the fall for it. The government needed someone to point at. And so they put him in, white collar jail for a couple of years, and he was not allowed to practice securities and blah, blah, blah. You ask 99% of people today who Michael Milken is, they'll say, oh, that's the philanthropist who runs the Milken Conference, who is the guy that is like the smartest guy in the world. You know, so in business, in particularly in banking, you mentioned his name, he's a god.
Right.
And he literally is the smartest person I've ever met. But he literally came out of that. He had cancer. He went and researched how to fight a cancer that he was told was unfightable, beat it, started a charity. His charity is very focused on how our medicine system is very focused in life on how to just deal with an immediate crisis and not prevention. So like what's causing the health crisis, which is our diets, our exercise, So started a charity around that. Launched something called the Milken Conference, which I'm sure it shuts LA down.
Oh yeah.
So he has, I don't know, 200,000 people flying at the Beverly Hilton.
Crazy, yeah.
Every world leader, every CEO of every fund. So he has this one dinner during the Milken Conference that they say more wealth is in one room in that one night than any place in the whole world at any time. Like it's almost been erased that, this guy who was on top of the world in banking in the 80s went to jail, literally like actual jail, was prohibited for life from investing, and now has been fully pardoned, has the largest conference in the world. He builds schools all over the world. He's probably in the top 10 philanthropists in the world, and definitely considered to be one of the most successful. But I watch him pivot and take life adversity, and he could have, in any one of those places, given up and said, the world did this to me.
Right.
And instead he just he crushed it. You and Mike, you get along really well. And he loves meeting successful, interesting people who have their own, paths. Like you and he would get along. Wow. I'd love to connect you guys. I don't want to keep you too long. We've been out here a lot, and I could talk to you all day. But if you, just a couple last things I'd love to hear is if you had to pick something about failure, a story that you know of, whether it's around a person, around you, around someone you've coached, around a coach, anyone that you can think of, that is both the failure that you wish you could have done differently, and the failure that you think, was most impactful in a life, whether that's your life or someone else's, what would those two be?
A story.
It could be about a person, it could be a team.
Well, I just watched the Jay-Z special with Oprah Winfrey's best friend. We went to the museum in New York, and I loved some things that he talked about his failure. Being, I think, the age of 26, 27, being a rapper, no one wanted to hear him. Every door closed.
Wow.
Everyone said, this is not very good. And what did he do? He pivoted. He looked to the right, looked to the left, and said, hey, let's just make our own label. Like, they didn't know anything about it.
Right.
And he said, people said, man, you're a genius. How did you come up with Rock Nation? He said, I came up with Rock Nation because nobody wanted me.
Interesting. That's so
I was just watching this last night. I'm like, I called my son in and was like, pay attention to this.
Yeah.
Because I'm always teaching.
Yeah.
And just to hear Jay talk about how he handled failure.
Which is, forget them, I'll start it on my own.
That's exactly what we said. We said, well, they didn't have a choice.
Yeah. That's like, that is the ultimate success story.
That's the ultimate, because he's a billionaire. And so when I watched it, not looking at where he's at, but looking at how he viewed failure. Because everyone said no, and he said, I could have quit. He said it.
Yeah.
You go watch, he said, I could have quit. This is the perfect reason.
Yeah. Everybody said, no, don't do it.
This is trash. No. He made his own record label, funded his own money, put all of his music, printed it up, and drove it over to the store, go back and pick up $100.
Wow, I didn't know that.
He would drive to the store, drop off his albums, come back and pick up $100.
Oh my gosh.
To reinvest. So he was investing in himself. Him and Dame and the other guys that was a part of. So I thought that was like, this was just right on my brain now. I was like, wow, he handled failure. And then he went through each part of his life and how he pivoted, how he handled failure, coming from RC Projects, coming from nothing, how he handled divorce, his mom and dad. Like, he went through it, and that was on my brain right now. It's like, if I'm
That's
present.
a really good, I didn't see it now, I gotta watch it. But Jay's a great guy, and he also has really good people around him. I love Jay Brown, and
he
such
got a
good,
bunch of guys.
Like, surrounds himself with
Tata, all those
super
guys,
high quality people.
But that story is relevant now. And, in the interview, they had this whole thing about someone saying that they would take the 500,000 over having a dinner or a lunch with Jay. And Jay was like, I would take the 500K too. He said, because I would never advise someone to take a loss. He said, and then I would go and buy all of my albums for $9 and get all the game for free.
So smart.
So what I did is on my way, I went and downloaded all of the albums again because he's one of my favorite artists.
Yeah.
Just to go back and to listen to the failure.
To hear what everybody else was saying.
To hear what we missed, because he's talking about failure.
So smart.
Even in his last song that he did with DJ Khaled, God Did. That's a failure song.
Yeah.
In the song, he literally raps at the age of 50 plus.
Yeah.
For like 6 minutes long, and in it, he had one verse that just stood out to me. He was like, you guys are surprised. We surprised. Like where he is today.
Yeah.
He's like, we laughing.
I didn't know how I was going to get here, yeah.
How did I get here? He was like, all of you guys, every time y'all see me, they're like, man, we're surprised. He's like, I'm still surprised.
So good.
In the verse. And he talked about
it now.
So everything that I picked up from that, and that was just fresh in my brain from last night. They did a great opportunity. I've been to the museum.
Yeah.
They blocked it off for me and Dwayne and them. So I went through everything in the museum.
It's awesome.
Just about two months ago when it first opened or whenever I went through. And that was awesome. But the story, the connecting piece.
His story, yeah. I didn't know that. I didn't know that about him, actually. Because like Rock Nation kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And actually what's funny for me, the first time I actually really, of course I knew Jay, but I didn't really know Rock Nation, was when I had the sports agency and CAA was losing all their clients to us.
Yep.
And so they announced a Rock Nation partnership it was the sports agency, the Rock Nation sports agency.
That's his pivot.
And well, actually what's really funny, because they told me later, because he's not really doing it that much anymore, was CAA came in and said, we're just going to pay you a lot of money to show up to signing meetings. Because they represented actors and directors and producers in union rules, they couldn't own content, so they couldn't make movies. Mm-hmm. So the whole reason I started a sports agency was because of CAA. I'll tell you this story because you're going to laugh at this. And then all of a sudden they couldn't compete with me, because if they're trying to sign someone and I'm like, hey, listen, I'll give you the same contract CAA. Well, it's a form agreement that my agent you're going to get a max contract, okay?
Right.
What are they going to sign for you? Nothing. But I'll put you in 2 movies. I'm not saying you're going to be a movie star, but if you're good, you'll be a movie star. You want to produce, you can produce here. You want to go do a TV show? I have 38 series on the air. You want to write a book? We have a book division. And so they couldn't compete. So what they did is they brought Rock Nation to say, Jay-Z's going to be your agent. And they grabbed a bunch of our guys who all came back because Jay showed up to the signing meetings, but then when it came to their career, the CAA just told Jay, we're just going to pay you. And he's like, well, I didn't really sign up to come manage their career. That was the first time I came across Rock Nation. And then I got to know Jay and Jay Brown. And I was so blown away with and I have a bunch of friends that work there now and acquaintances. And through Triller, we do a ton of work with them. And they couldn't be, they're my favorite company to work with.
They're pretty good. But just hearing his story, and it's really fresh in my brain, really showed how he handled failure. And that's to answer your question, that was the one thing I could think about right away.
He's a humble guy. He's such a humble guy. For what he has done, he's humble.
Because of where he came from, I don't think, he's still surprised. He just said it.
Yeah. And I like that he surrounds himself with humble people who work hard and are very respectful too,
Yeah.
I'm running the studio, and I don't know, once a month I'd get a call from Richard Lovett. Richard, he's one of the 3 partners at CAA. He oversees the sports division.
Okay.
He's not the head of sports, but they report to him.
Vino's my guy.
Vino would basically ask Richard, or I was close to Brian and Kevin, which were my guys there. And they'd call and say, hey, we have this, will you meet with so-and-so? I'd be like, yeah, okay, whatever, sure. So I'm having this meeting one day, and my head of corporate finance, who was a really avid, just obsessed with basketball, sees Carmelo Anthony walking out of my office. This is like 2007. And he's like, well, what's Carmelo Anthony doing there? He's like, I don't know, Richard and Brian called and asked me to have a meeting with him. He's like, you know what they're doing, right? I was like, asking me to have a meeting with Carmelo. I don't know, I was talking about movies and stuff. And they knew that I wasn't I'm not an obsessed basketball fan, so to me it was just, it's a regular meeting. Right. I grew up, I like basketball, but I was never I'm not a diehard sports fanatic. Just because if I get into something, I actually get obsessed. So I have to be careful what I pick. And so they are trying to sign him. He's a free agent right now. So they're showing him like, oh, we know him, and if you want to be in movies, and I was like, really? So I called a friend. I said, do you know anybody that has their basketball agency license? And they're like, yeah, we know this one guy. You should meet him. He's whatever. He's got he has 2 minor league players, and he's got his license. So I met with the guy. I was like, listen, if I can sign a big player, like I want to use your license, but I don't want to pay you anything yet. I'll just give you a piece of this company.
Right.
I'm like, I'm going to start a sports agency tied to the studio. Originally, I called it Rogue Sports because I bought Rogue from Universal. Then we renamed it Relativity. And I asked him, I said, who's the biggest free agent in basketball right now? He said, his name's Amari Stoudemire. See if you can have lunch with me on Saturday. He's like, you want to just like call up Amari? He's like, I mean, I'm sure he has like a manager and, yeah. So Amari came to my house in Malibu on Saturday, and I used to live on La Costa Beach. Sat down, I was like, listen, I don't really know that much about basketball, but I had the guy there who had his license, like, he's got his license, so you're getting a max contract from what I understand. So nothing's changing that agreement. He can get it done for you. But here's what I can do. Like, I can be your business plan, because he was a very young player. I think he was 19. And I'm like, you want to be in movies? Again, I can't tell you I'm make you a movie star, but I'll get you in movies, and if you're great, you can be a movie star. You want to do books? We can do books. You want to be a producer? So I tell him, I'm like, look, what are your dreams? And he said, I want to write children's books. I was like, oh, well, we have a publishing division. Great. So I said, look, end of the day, I can't tell you I'm going to do anything for you in basketball, but I don't think you need me to do anything for you in basketball. Like, we'll hire whoever you need. But here's what I can do for you outside of basketball that nobody else can. And it was only because I saw what TA was trying to do and couldn't do, right? And so he's like, fuck it. He said yes. But Mario that year was up for
MVP.
He won actually that year, and it was really funny
Probably
videos.
MVP
But
because Steve Nash.
that's literally how Relativity Sports started, was that meeting with Amari.
That's dope.
He said yes, and I said, I want you to be our guy. And next thing I know, within a year, we were the largest basketball agency in the United States.
And and just hearing the story, remember, nothing happens the way you want it to happen.
Ever.
But just because you had no fear, you paid attention. That's what I mean by creating systems. You've seen a strategy. It wasn't basketball that you talked. You actually talked to them about life, movies, books, things that other people would not focus on. Every meeting that he took probably talked about just basketball.
That's all they cared about, right?
So you had the advantage, and this is how you get the advantage in life. You can't think outside the box. You have to think like there's no box. Congratulations.
There is no
on
box,
that.
like you
no
said
box.
earlier. It's the Matrix. There is no spoon.
Right.
Do you remember? I don't know if you remember that kid in the Matrix. Remember that line?
No.
You don't remember it? So that you got to watch. So Matrix was one of my favorite movies of all time. You got to rewatch it. And Keanu Reeves, they're in there, and he's trying to figure out life. Like, this Matrix, is it real? Is it not real? Which is kind of like us. Is it real? Is it not real? And he sees this little kid sitting there, and the kid who's like, he looks like a monk. He's got his like head shaved and the monk thing on, and he's holding a spoon and he's bending and it's going ring, ring. And Keanu Reeves is like, how do you do that? He goes, the trick is not to try and bend the spoon. That would be impossible. The trick is to realize there is no spoon. And you're like, wow. And that's actually, when I look at life, there is no hurdle, there is no roadblock. There's a roadblock and hurdle, but it's not a dead stop.
Right.
There's always a way around or over, right?
Always.
So what do you leave our audience with? You got to give them, like, the world wants to know you're the guy that takes people who already are at the very top and you
Push them
to even better.
Yep.
So what people can learn from you.
One thing I like to leave you guys with, I know our lives been set up around results. Everything is result driven, right? When you're chasing results, you will experience more failure. So what I want you to do is I want you not to chase the results. I want you to chase the process. I want you to go one step in front of the other step, one moment at a time, and embrace where you are, be where your feet are. And when you look up, you'll see if you achieve where you're supposed to be. But don't focus on the end, focus on the process. I'm out.
That's the best advice I've ever heard. I don't think I could add anything to it. I'm actually going to learn from it, but it is literally, that's it. Put your head down.
Yep.
Focus on whatever it is.
Right here.
Zeus. Everybody, this is Zeus. Right here. Say hi, Zeus. No, but honestly, it's that is it, and that's how I live my life. Am I achieving today? Am I achieving tomorrow? Am I achieving right now? You gotta pick what your end goal is. Don't look up.
Don't look up.
Don't listen to the people around you. People that love you will want you to succeed. People that matter know the truth. I always say, don't read the comments.
Yeah.
Don't listen. People who have time to write those comments, they're not the people you care about. Focus on what your goal is.
That's it.
And don't look up till you're there. And you know
Don't
what?
look up.
Like we said, it's not going to happen the way you think it's going to happen.
Nope.
You got to always
Pivot.
be ready
To pivot.
to pivot and then go forward again. And
Yeah.
then look back up when you've pivoted and you hit there, right?
That's it. Mastering the pivot. You're a master pivoter.
Well, you're definitely more of a master pivoter, but like, this was such a pleasure. Thank you for being here.
Yes.
Thank you for really teaching us, but hopefully the first of many we're going to have you on, because I think you can help a lot of people.
Let's go for it. Let's
I
do it.
love it.